Hello, this is Yana the Heretic, and my channel is The Unpopular Opinion, Becoming Popular, where we discuss human design, weather of the week. It happens every 6 days, and there's 4 quarters which mark different aspects of human life. And this week we are going to be discussing Gate 45, which is the gate of gathering together, or the gate of the gatherer. And this is another throat gate under Lakshmi, and there's a lot to say about it. There's so many different influences just constantly flooding into my field when it comes down to money and money management. So this is the ability to have. This is the voice that says, I have, or I have not. But generally, everybody with this gate should have processed their relationship with the soul of money, and they could be extremely great at it. So this is the one that is the queen or the king in the chess game, the commander, any person at the top of a hierarchy that has resources, and they're desperately needed in the world because all of our generators and everyone that wants to use their willpower or their motor center to use up all of their fuel, they're looking for these types of people in this role. This is generally considered a manifester channel that is extremely tribal, and it is considered the monarchy, or the monarch, the tribal ruler. And it does sit in the throat center, connecting to the ego center with gate 21. Now, gathering together is, one cannot be without the other. So even a person, once you start getting up the ladder, up the hierarchy, you have a bunch of money, and you still need to place this money somewhere. You still need somebody to handle your money, and you need to work with people to get what it is that you need done, because once you do have a lot of money, there's a lot of rivers or systems in place that you have put upon yourself for the most part. There are some people that save their money and, they're very charitable, or, they don't really excessively spend it. So we're looking at both the negative and positive sides of this. And I'm going to start out with expressing, what it's like when it comes down to what this looked like in the past and how it looks like now. So we have barely any kings and queens left, and for the most part we realize that one person isn't really meant to rule them all, although we still see that happening in politics. So now today we look at it more as a democracy instead of a monarchy, and we look at what is gate 45 in society. It is the head of the corporation. It's the head of a commune, the commander, within a sector for the military, or, a person that has fought their way to the top, either with fuel or logic. And for the most part, we like to think about money as a tool, as a very valuable tool, and where you put your money and how you exert it really depends on the character behind it. Whether or not you have full perception of, life experience. Are you somebody that's born into slavery? or poverty? Or are you born into a lavish life? So maybe in a position of slavery or poverty, you are fighting, especially if you have willpower and you're born in that type of situation. You're going to be fighting up against this because you are truly devoted to getting yourself out of that situation. For your family, for whatever it is behind, what keeps you sovereign, right? And the one thing I do see in the world that happens, especially in body piercing culture, and this happens in many different ways, is it wasn't around back in the day, and you did have to fight for it. You had to fight to be yourself, to be weird, to be tattooed, and to put holes in your body. And those people that are old school piercers, they feel like they deserve this status. They're at the top of the hierarchy because they carved the way to making it popular. And the negative aspects of that is, although you may have full perspective of how difficult it was to get into that hierarchy and to really coin something, do you actually loosen the reins a little bit to understand that, oh, well, just because it's not harder for somebody now to open up a shop and do the same thing, does that make them have to undergo the same amount of discipline? Do you have to have this huge ego around it that makes you feel like you deserve the whole entire thing, the whole entire vocation, like, let me just take it all because I've fought wars for this. But the reality is, most of us have fought really hard where we have come. And, everyone's got a story. And when it comes down to never knowing what it's like to be poor or impoverished or not have a meal, for a long period of time, we could lack the perception of, well, I'm going to actually care for these people. I'm going to actually give them opportunities. I'm going to actually give them education with my money, with my charity. I want to see the world full of people that are educated, or, that aren't having to fight for territory or fight for something that, one person has and the other does not. So it really depends on who this Gate 45 is. Are they going to be sovereign, and they, this is on the cross of sovereignty as much as it is on the cross of rulership. So what is behind the veil? What is behind the curtain? Who's orchestrating this? I personally do not think that money is negative like I used to. I am grateful for all the lessons I have learned with money because it is an energetic flow. It is a exalted muse to be nourished, to be desired. It helps you so much in life be able to have your cup overflow, and therefore you can extend those gifts to other people in your family, and help your family out or help your friends out, and just be able to, shift the roles within your community. Because you could be like, okay, well, I paid for you to do this artistic project and I invested in that for you. And, maybe when you're having a difficult time, it feels really good when those same people jump in and they're like, I see you. Like, I'm gonna go ahead and support you now for everything that you've done for me. Now that is the highest form of this gate, the one that is an educator, the one that is charitable, the one that really cares about human lives, instead of their own power, instead of their own possessions. Gate 45 is the one that organizes their possessions. They don't necessarily want to deal with leading people, even though they have the ability to. They have the voice to do it, to create or manifest things into actuality. But they don't really want to take on the roles with being, involved in having to delegate the duties or to tell people what to do and what their role is. That's where the 21 comes in. And that is the ideal harmonic. That's the only harmonic we have with gate 45 in the ego center. And gate 21 creates the channel of money. It's called the money line. So these are people that know how to use money. They're aware that you have to spend money to make money. And they have that consciousness. If they allow themselves to polish up these lines, they're totally capable of prioritizing and using this to their benefit. It's really interesting to find out that you have the money line, especially if you've been giving away, your role as the manager of money to somebody else. That's when I've seen this gate turn completely sour and that person is completely indebted to somebody else. Gate 45 should never allow other people to take care of their own money. They are designed to do it themselves, and they prefer to do it themselves. Same with 21. You cannot tell gate 21s how to do what they want to do. They're designed to be in a leadership role, although they cannot assume their position as the leader. They have to be asked or seen as the one that is capable of leading, or else they will meet like fierce resistance. Nobody likes that person in the room. This is really seeing civilization at its whole. There's always going to be pawns. There's always going to be the king and queen and bishops and rooks and the horses. I forget what the horses are. I guess the knights. Maybe. I don't know. I haven't played chess in a while, so yeah, this really shows you how, civilization is working together at its form and the underbelly of it, like this is Bruce Wayne, this is the one that has resources and he needs to put his money somewhere. He needs to, fight for Gotham, he's sovereign to Gotham, and he doesn't exactly manage his own money the entire time, but he learns the value of doing so. Because it was his lineage, his parents, his father had really taken and built an empire for people of Gotham. And therefore it holds so much value and purpose to save these people, I also was talking with my partner, like, he loves Bitcoin, and for the life of me, like, I just can't comprehend. How many people have taught me Bitcoin? It's tons of people, and only I think it's been like 10 years of me trying to comprehend Bitcoin. And I'm like, what are you spending your time on? So we get into these feuds, right? We get into these like heated debates, mostly heated for me, because if I don't understand something, then I get really frustrated. And it's a really complex system. And if you think about universal currency, it's the only one available, right? And what does universal currency do in the world of economics? It makes dollar a dollar. It's all the same no matter which country you're in, which is something that's truly amazing, because I was discussing the root systems of this, and I'm a 5'1", right? I'm all about the root systems, and I was like, economics are ridiculous. Like, I tried to learn them so much in life. Like, I was like the class I completely failed in high school, and it's just because, you know, you're born into the civilization. You're born into these laws and these, you know, these responsibilities that you didn't ask for, really. And, you know, these countries are in debt, they go to war, and it's like you're just thrown into it, right? And, you know, learning how much debt our country is in, I was like, why don't we just like cancel each other out? Like, you know, we're indebted to China and China's indebted to us. Why don't we just take those numbers and cancel them out? Or why don't we just completely blank slate it? You know, how great would that be, you know, if we could do that? But the other side of that is, well, if we just say, okay, no one's indebted to anybody, what about the people's lives that went into, you know, creating that company? Or the motherboards that are created, or the microchips, or the various tech that was created. If we're indebted to a country because of that, then that debt is people's lives, you know, people's energy that they spent, you know, perhaps it's 80, you know, hours a week for some people. Their work is their life. And that's how it is in certain countries. Like, you don't get a choice. You don't get a better job. If you want to have a family and to be able to feed them, you have to do these jobs that are available. But the equality isn't there, you know? The weeks where you have to work 80 hours is completely insane, right? And it's really teetering on the scale, you know, back and forth. And it's caused a lot of depression in the world as well. And, you know, how are we going to figure out these answers? So these are questions that I encourage everyone to speak about. You know, we're going to be speaking about money after all. So the other aspect to this, I really love this show called You on Netflix. I don't know what other platforms it's on, but that's where I watch it. Yes, I'm guilty. And You is something that's really interesting. It really kind of more warps your mind. Like, I'm a huge thriller snob. Like, I love thrillers. I love the movies that make you think, the shows that make you think about the position of somebody, you know, and their hierarchy and what they do and why they do what they do. They're protecting themselves, they're protecting their family, and they would do anything there is no cost too heavy a burden for them to keep their reputation, or to keep themselves out of jail, to keep their reputation clean. And that's the problem, is that, a lot of people don't take the time to process their trauma and to process their roles as the responsible ones. Things get extremely heavy, and how do we psychologically adapt to that responsibility? How does it warp our morality? If we fuck up royally, and people find out, what happens? How are you going to stay true to yourself in this life? That is the real question of the tribal ruler. That's the real depiction of, how do you stay pure to your heart and to the soul of money? Are you okay with blood money? Or are you going to fight for the things that are really needed in the world? Investing in things that are really needed in the world right now. Or educating people, about anything, about just reading and writing and poetry and arts and, systems like human design. My mentor has this whole channel, and I see great things, great, vast things that she uses her money for. So people with this gate aren't bad, A lot of people may assume so, but it all depends on the vehicle, and it depends on how authentic you can shape yourself. It also depends on how tribal, individual your chart is. So if we spend our money wisely, we get to really shape history, right? There's the person that owns the land that's like, yeah, let's build this monument, let's go to the moon, and how are we going to achieve that without these people? We would never know it was possible without the people that wield the resources. That is a heavy role to have in the world, because it's like, how is it possible to organize this? All right, I feel that I depicted this gate pretty well. I'm gonna just check in with this hexagram here. All right, it's called clustering in the I Ching, and it looks like that. Clustering. Pack together tight groups of people, animals, and things. Assemble, concentrate, and collect. Yeah. All right, the questions of the week. Are you ready? How do you balance your morality when it comes to having a lot? And how do you make it equal in your community or not? Do you have or have not? Have you gotten a place where your cup is overflowing and been able to share your prosperity? If not, what does the bigger picture look like? And does it make you feel driven to accomplish it? Now, there's no wrong or right answer to any of this. It's generally a heavier topic than most because, it can make people feel a little guilty, and that isn't my role unless it's, something positive comes from it. So, I personally feel like I am not in a place of, being able to give as much as I would like, and it's honestly created a lot of turmoil in my own body, in my own systems, because all I want is to to create a culture around creativity and mental health, and there's still a ton of steps to go. So, yeah. Why does it seem appealing to have ego definition? Do you desire to be responsible for other people? If so, then where does that stem from? So you'll hear a lot in human design that people want ego definition because it is the wheelhouse of willpower. It is the ability to do and persevere. Even if you don't want to do something, you're still going to show up. You're still going to make it happen. Now, it's not a role meant for anyone, everyone, I mean. And, if you find yourself proving that you can, and your body is really taking a lot of hits, you got to think about your body. You got to think about how you're showing up. If you're not showing up in the greatest way, is it really making the impact that you want? If you're going to feel ill and sick, that's a hard question to answer. If you were to depict a new layer of awareness and knowledge coming soon in 2027, what would the leaders look like to you? Is there a recipe for how we can avoid tyranny? Or does it feel safer and more comfortable to be taken care of and given a place? If we look at Russia, my grandparents, this is my grandparents telling me, you can't talk about this on the phone, because people are always listening. And you can't say anything negative about Mr. Putin, even though that is a very alive and big tyrannical government. And we see the repercussions of that. But some people enjoy it. What does the ideal ruler look like to you? What would they be versed deeply in? And last but not least, what books on money management have you been avoiding reading? Economics today have been thrashed and seemingly confusing. How can you find the correct loopholes to grant yourself a better comprehension? And I leave you with a lot to think about in your brain. I hope you're okay. Everything's gonna be great. Don't overwhelm yourself with this. But nevertheless, I appreciate you watching and subjecting yourself to all these thoughts and theories and the true threads of human design. I appreciate you all. If you wish to know if you have this line, this money line in your chart, please visit electromagnetic-identity.com and book a session with me. I'm happy to help you answer your questions, and I'll see you next week.